Hi, everybody, it's Ron again, and I'm here with another day of headlines. It seems each more dire than the next. And I guess it's all the more reason we should take a look and see if we can add some context, commentary on what's going on. These screaming, scary headlines here we have the innocent faces of 32 children held in tunnels by Hamas. Obviously, you can't imagine what it's like for these families here to endure this. My net is a little bit slow, but this picture says it all here. And as we have again right here after it, Hamas official, we will repeat October 7th again and again. This is a little bit of a rabble-rousing headline. It's in Jerusalem Post, but I think it does capture the radical aspect of the Hamas group that is governing Gaza, or did govern Gaza. They're under attack by Israel now. Yesterday we talked about the UN alarmed as Mideast war intensifies, because the UN is more than ever before a paper tiger since Russia invaded Ukraine, and since Russia's on the Security Council, they can veto any sort of Security Council resolution against anything that's going on. So it basically mutes the UN. Israel leans into World War II rhetoric to justify conflict. And my MSN is not loading in here where I am, which is the middle of nowhere. But what I wanted to get down here is you see open hatred of Jews surges globally, boycotts and firebombs. This is quite amazing, and I've referred to this in the past week, where we have had this ongoing struggle between the various entities that have stood in as the government for the Palestinians in the left bank and in Gaza. And we've had the situation where multiple times all of the countries in the region have gotten together to try to destroy Israel with coordinated wars against Israel. So this has been going on for a long time. And most of the time in the Western democracies, the reaction to this has been a support for Israel as a Western ally, as the only democracy in the region. And I think when you get to the late 1990s, the world leaders really kind of held Israel's feet to the fire, and Israel was ready to sign the final agreements for the Palestinian statehood. I mean, the Palestinian Authority did control the West Bank and Gaza for a time. But at the end of the 1990s, when Clinton tried to get that deal done, it was going to probably settle this situation, but Yasser Arafat would not sign the final agreement for whatever reason, and he died under mysterious circumstances. Later, it's one of those situations where, I think the Gazans, the Palestinians, have suffered under perhaps poor leadership, and also that other countries in the region, foes of Israel, have used the Palestinian situation for their own benefit. Perhaps Iran is one example of that. So it's, when I'm trying to get this article open here. Oh, I did before. Okay, this article, when you read it, I mean, there's no statistics or anything, and it is just lots of incidents around the world of surprising and unprecedented protests. And this is what's different about this situation, where you have in the Western democracies apparently looks like a lot of anti-Israeli protests. And not only that, it's really anti-Jewish protests, which really goes beyond just opposing perhaps the Israeli tactics in fighting back against what Hamas did there in southern Israel. So I used to be involved in polling and where you're trying to divine the feelings of people around the world. And I haven't seen any reliable polls that show whether this idea of being against Israel or being against Jews is really a widespread thing, or we're just seeing these collections of headlines and incidents pop up in a way that you kind of always, nowadays you're always going to have some extreme reactions and the media plays those up. But the question we have to ask ourselves is this indicative of worldwide opinion, or is it a sign that just some incidents are being showed to us in the media? So I'm not clear on whether that is. I mean, in the United States, you are going to always have nutty, kind of left-wing hippie students who are going to take extreme views against, knee-jerk views against what's going on, like all those student groups have in U.S. colleges and universities. Whether that really means that they actually believe that, or it's a function of a wider society is now turning against Israel, I'm not sure if that's clear or not. So some more craziness in the U.S. House of Representatives, more about Trump here. I'm looking at the left side here. Local journalist arrested in small Alabama town for grand jury story. Yeah, we sometimes have this in the United States. In the United States we have, I think, what you would call the extreme freedom of speech, but you do sometimes have in small towns, if you cross the sheriff or you cross the local powers, they might come after you. And of course, people love to get all excited about this and say that how dare they do it, and it usually ends badly for the local authorities who are trying to clamp down on freedom of press in these areas. NFL news. Snow cover at record levels as November starts. I'm usually not so interested in weather. Weather just seems like a thing that is a generalized thing that I don't know. You can't control. You can't really talk about it or give context to. It's just you have a certain number of hurricanes and flooding, and what happens. Here we have Bobby Knight, legendary basketball coach, dies at 83, polarizing powerhouse. This is, I don't know how much he's known around the world, but he's what we call an A-type personality, a real tense, domineering kind of person, known for like bossing around the players, hitting them occasionally. He famously threw a chair out onto the court to protest a call in a basketball game that he didn't like. But he was an interesting person to listen to. And years ago I read, he had a book, and I'm trying to find, it was something about like learning to fail or the power of failure. I think it was a self-help book. Now here he is in his heyday, hurling something to the floor. He wasn't this calm, kind of reserved guy. He was a guy who was screaming and shouting all the time. This is what he looked like most of the time, screaming and yelling. I don't see the name of this book, but it's interesting where, you know how in maybe the last 20 years or so, we've kind of focused on positive thinking and, positive outcome, and not saying negative things or dwelling on that. It's like it's putting it out into the universe. But these old school guys like Bobby Knight, they're all about failure. They're about telling you, don't fail, don't do this. And in this book, he talks about how when you focus on failure as opposed to success, you think about taking action to get over that failure, and you think about not just letting you think about different scenarios if you fail, because failure is always an option. And they say success, failure is not an option, but it always can happen. There are things out of your control, so you always have other fallbacks to go to. And you talk about people in the military or whatever, you train so when everything goes wrong, you know exactly what to do. You may be scared, and you may be scared to death, but your training, you can fall back on your training, and in this case, you do this, that, and the other. So it's a different way to look at things, and he was kind of an old school guy. This is fascinating here. This is RFK Jr. Now, this is the son of Robert Kennedy, the presidential candidate who was assassinated in, I believe, '68. He was the brother of JFK, who was assassinated in '63. So anyway, a lot of people expected these other generations that went from RFK and JFK to be the new political princes of the American left-leaning Democrat Party. But unfortunately for them, RFK Jr. is a kind of a weird, polarizing, anti-vaxxer guy. And he's running for president against Biden, as I think many people may be pondering. There are many people circling the Biden and his elderly aspect, thinking he can't possibly be a candidate, because people will not be electing him. They're really electing his vice president, which is Kamala, and she is perhaps doesn't seem to be suitable, doesn't have maybe a presidential aspect to her. For whatever you want to say about Hillary Clinton, you can imagine her as a chief executive, even if she's unlikable or not personable. But the present vice president, who would be president if Biden were reelected, and then he would die in office, she seems perhaps not ready for prime time, not up to the task. So here we have RFK polling supposedly 22% in a three-way race. This is a bizarre thing. Now, in a lot of countries, you have your parliamentary system where you have nobody's really winning an outright majority. But in the United States, you have the Republicans and the Democrats. And depending on who you ask, really at the core, they're not really that much different, or they haven't been in past decades in the way they govern. They have to say and scream and yell that they're different during the elections, but ultimately in the way they govern, maybe they're not. So anybody who is a third-party candidate usually might poll 2 or 3, 4%, not very much. That would be the very top. But for someone like RFK to receive 22% in a three-way race, I guess with Trump and Biden, that is see, he's going to kill one of those candidates. And what I mean by that is, in these systems where everybody kind of falls, like in the United States, into the right or the left, and there's only two real viable candidates. If there's an independent challenger who gets more than a few percent, he's likely getting that on either in taking votes away from the Democrats or the Republican, and will cause one of those to lose by his candidacy. So this is an interesting thing that would cause watchers of the presidential race to say, "Oh my gosh, there really is a lot of dissatisfaction, probably with Trump and probably with Biden, as being unsuitable candidates at this point." And the other idea is, like, right now RFK is I believe he will be in the Democratic primaries, and usually when you have an incumbent president who has a challenger, in like in his second term, when he's running again as an incumbent, that usually shows that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with that president, and they often do not win in that circumstance. Now here's something that says data shows his bid is a threat to Republicans. So maybe all this kind of weird anti-vaxxer stuff that he's touting actually would leak the more right wing votes away from Trump, rather than hurt the Democrats, even though RFK is a Democrat. More problems. Republican governors there in Arkansas, not that interesting. Inflation battle in the United States. Does Speaker of the House have bank account? See, this is the thing. I guess you want the press to get into these aspects, but wow, what would it be like to run for any kind of office at the state or national level in the United States? And that means you're willing to have your whole life opened up to be looked at, to be scrutinized, to have groups going after you. You gotta really want to be there and empowered to go through all that. Yeah, and this is the new House Speaker that came on, who's supposed to be a Trump ally. So the press is really going after him with a fine-tooth comb and making sure everybody knows all of the things that are wrong with him, supposedly. Republican representative torches party on the way out. Okay, my MSN came in here. No, who? Ken Buck, Republican from Colorado. I think many old-time people who lean to the right are Republicans. And there were a lot of people, both on the right and the left side, who kind of fell into line with the success of both the Reagan and the Bush eras, even though he's a one-termer. But there were a lot of people who ended up kind of siding with the Republicans on a lot of things. They seemed to be moderate. They brought the world into order. They tamed inflation. They got the economy on track. They weren't very progressive in doing more for minorities or bringing all Americans together, but they came into power at a time when America was on the ropes and economically destroyed and weak in the world. So all they were doing was kind of trying to bring it back, not breaking new ground. But what's happened, really since Obama was elected, and maybe even the missteps of George W. Bush in some international affairs and economics, it's really roiled the Republican Party, and the Republican Party has gone through the Tea Party first, and they've gone through all this weird QAnon stuff, and the way Trump has sort of rabble-roused people to believe in strange things, and he conducts himself not as a politician really, but as a media figure who can just say about anything to spin things. And I think we've also seen the Republicans have gone back to their traditional maybe isolationism. Since the end of World War II, the Republicans were the ones to go out in the world and have wars and be the policeman. But before that, I suppose on sort of both parties' side, there was in America, especially in Middle America, those who would be conservative. They were more isolationist, like, well, let Europe have those wars. And we're okay way over here. I suppose maybe the Cold War and the threat of nukes at any time knitted the world together, and it made it so that you couldn't just be an isolationist anymore. Businessmen being bad. Chinese influencers show migrants how to cross the U.S. southern border. I it's not too hard, and the federal government in the United States is at odds with state governments in how secure the border should be. That's an interesting subject. What else do we have here? Pope calling for something or other. Largest Christian university fined record amount for allegedly deceiving students. That's a very clickbaity headline there. Let's see what we have. About the cost of its doctoral programs. I suppose this is, again, we've talked about news as irony. So a Christian university, they're supposed to have good morals and ethics, but yet they deceived people about the cost of something. How ironic. That's news. That people love stories like that, like the politician who was an anti-corruption politician caught taking bribes, that sort of thing. Doctor claims multivitamins raise risk of cancer. We always have to be careful when we see stories like this in the media about medical subjects because they're often based on very small studies, and they're often, again, very clickbaity sort of things to make you, I've got to see that. And this is sort of interesting. I'd read this in other studies that you take vitamins cause cancerous cells to grow and multiply. But I don't know. We got to look down and find what is this study based on? Is it you're just talking to a doctor who? Is it talking just to one doctor who did one study with a small sample size? I really don't see where it says exactly what this is based on. Well, they say there's a growing body of scientific research pointing to synthetic vitamin supplements increasing the risk if they're used daily over a prolonged period. In one flagship study, blah, blah, blah. That's interesting. I don't know. Let's just cross our fingers so we don't get cancer, I guess. It's just one of those things that comes to you like, in The Wizard of Oz when a house falls on the witch. Sometimes a house falls on you. Smartphone linked to lower sperm quality. Okay, well, the ship has sailed on that because everybody's got those smartphones in their pockets now. Let's see. Dozens of bird names honoring enslavers racist will be changed. Okay, well, I'll leave that. These sort of kind of trendy moral changes to change names and be upset about, that Southern battle flag. Just leave that to the local people in the states to decide if you should make those changes. Sometimes when you get older, you want to stand on tradition, but when you really look back in history, you'll see that maybe that's not the best idea. So you let the young people make those decisions. So before I go, this is my book. I'm a writer. This is my latest novel. It's a book of life in Thailand for different people, some who've come here to work from overseas, some of the local people, all living in their concrete cities and their internal struggles and their feelings. I tried to make it a work of literature, something very interesting and pithy for today and for all time. So it's on Amazon and Kindle. Check it out if you want to read it. I see I'm kind of dark in the frame here, but hopefully you can hear my voice. And I will see you tomorrow with more news and context on the headlines. Bye-bye.